Good afternoon, and welcome to today's edition of Wakeman's Washington. There is lots of news coming out of Washington today, so let's get right to our top story. The trade war between the U.S. and China might be coming to an end. The two leaders met during the G20 summit in Argentina and struck a deal that would prevent another hike in the tariffs. President Trump touted the trade deal as a victory, calling it extraordinary. The stock market seemed to agree that the deal meant good things for the economy. The Dow rose 288 points on Monday. Trump originally threatened to extend the tariffs to all Chinese products. As part of the deal, Trump has agreed to maintain the 10% tariff on only $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. China has agreed to purchase more U.S. product to reduce the trade imbalance. Another big meeting between world powers took place this week in Poland. Nearly 200 nations attended the United Nations Climate Summit. The goal of the summit was to strengthen the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. The U.S. withdrew from the Paris Agreement last year, and many senators continue to question whether climate change is a true concern. The U.S. maintained this critical stance this week at the G20 summit as well. The U.S. was the only country to not back the Paris Accord during the summit. Over 65,000 protesters were in the Belgian capital on Sunday to urge leaders to take dramatic action for climate change. And next up, citizens all across the U.S. are coming together this week to mourn the death of President George H.W. Bush and celebrate his life and legacy as president. He died at the age of 94 in his home on Friday. He was flown on Air Force One today for a state funeral in the U.S. Capitol. He will lie in the Capitol Rotunda from 5 p.m. on Monday to 7 a.m. on Wednesday. The funeral will take place just a few hours later on Wednesday at the Washington National Cathedral. President Trump will be in attendance. The late president made it clear that he wanted the current president to be at the funeral. The Clintons and the Obamas will also be in attendance. Next up, James Comey will testify in a private deposition this week with House Republicans. The former FBI director is a subject of interest in the FBI's handling of the two biggest controversies during the 2016 election: Hillary Clinton's email practices and Russian interference in the election. He originally pushed back on having to testify. However, he eventually agreed to testify under the condition that the transcript of the testimony would be made public. And James Comey's testimony isn't the only thing that will be made public this week. Many important court filings and documents are due to be released surrounding the Mueller investigation. These documents will include key information regarding Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, documents about Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, and Trump's ex-campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, will also be made public. The filings could give new details about the investigation that could shed light on whether Trump had any involvement in the Russian interference. And as the Mueller investigations heat up, the government is on the brink of another shutdown. The federal government will partially shut down if a decision can't be reached over whether to fund the border wall. The funding for many agencies will run out this week, leading to a shutdown. The Department of Homeland Security will run out of funding on December 7th. The deadline will most likely be extended due to the Bush funeral. Many representatives seek to pass a short-term stopgap bill that would buy more time before the deadline. And much closer to home, there is possible evidence of voter fraud in the North Carolina House election. It all started when investigators were looking into claims that absentee ballots were changed. The officials found that many absentee ballots had a witness signature from the same group of people. Some of the people are part of a group working for one of the GOP candidates' campaign. And while there is still debate and tension over the midterm elections last month, many are looking to the elections in 2020, including potential presidential candidates. Former Vice President Joe Biden says that he believes that he is the most qualified person to be president. He said this during a speech today at the University of Montana. He says the decision is coming in the next 2 months and will depend heavily on whether his family as a whole is prepared for a run. The campaign season will kick off in the next few months. Coming to North Carolina next November, the Republican National Convention. The location of the Democratic National Convention has not yet been decided. That's what's going on in Washington today. Thanks for listening.